UFC Vegas 105 betting show. We have 13 fights lined up for this Saturday. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to kick things off in the women's strawweight division as we currently have a closely lined fight. It's currently a pick'em between Vanessa Demopolous and Talita Alencar. And you guys recognize that name because Alencar fought on Contender Series a couple seasons ago. She fought Stephanie Luciano in a very close fight that went to a draw. They ended up running it back in the UFC, and she got beat really bad. That was her most recent fight now, and it was a bad look for her. She gassed out. She shot 1 for 10 on takedowns, could not get the takedowns, and she's very one-dimensional because she comes from a high-level grappling background, holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but she needs to get the fight to the ground because her striking is no good, and I mentioned her gas tank is not that good either. Now, what's working for her in this matchup is Vanessa Demopolous does not defend takedowns. She defends takedowns at under 30% in the UFC. She's very easy to take down, and she's willing to go to the mat because she's more of a grappler herself. She's able to spam volume on the feet, but she's very hittable, and her striking is not super threatening. And her grappling is where she feels more comfortable. She's very opportunistic with her submission attempts. But I mentioned she's going to give up the takedowns, and this is a spot where she just faced a high-level grappler in Jacqueline Amorim her last time out, and Amorim ended up submitting her inside the first round. I could see this one going similarly, but even if Alencar doesn't get the submission, I do expect her to be able to get the takedowns and get the better of the grappling exchanges. So I'm going to side with Alencar in the minus 110 range. We'll say it's Alencar by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up, we have Victor Henry, a minus 218 favorite. The comeback on Pedro Falcao is plus 180. And I do see some value on the underdog here in Falcao. This is a guy that's very well-rounded. He's got power on the feet, solid striking. He's not super high volume, but I think he's live to have the bigger moments here because he is going to have a clear power advantage. And he's also a good grappler as well. We've seen him mix in the takedowns in his short UFC career and on Contender Series, but previous to that as well on the regional scene. And he's a good grappler once he gets you down. Victor Henry, on the other hand, is a high-volume striker, mainly wants to keep the fight on the feet. I know he mixed in takedowns in his last fight, which was a little bit surprising to me, but we saw what happened there. He ended up getting submitted. He also turns 38 years old in just 2 months now, so he's certainly getting older. 38 years old, not a great age in terms of the smaller weight classes in the bantamweight division. So yeah, I'm just looking to fade Henry here at minus 200, whatever. I just think Falco's live to have the bigger moments. Sure, Henry might be able to out-volume him and win a close decision, but I think at minus 218, it's just too much value for me to pass up on the underdog in Pedro Falcao in the plus 180 range. I think he makes his fight competitive, and I actually think he wins it. So I'm going to go with the underdog here, Falcao. Falcao by decision is the official pick. And next fight up, we have Loma Lookboonmee, a massive favorite here. She's in the minus 600 range. The comeback on Estela Nunes is plus 400. And this is one I'm not going to spend a ton of time on because you have two primarily Muay Thai strikers. Lookboonmee comes from a high-level striking background. Estela Nunes does come from a decently striking background as well, but I think there's levels to this. Lookboonmee, despite being the shorter fighter with a 5-inch reach disadvantage, I expect her to be the better striker in this spot. I also have concerns with Estela Nunes. For starters, she's coming off that nasty elbow injury against Victoria Dudakova nearly 2 years ago, so you have the potential for some ring rust here. She also just has proven to be not a very good fighter in the UFC and throughout her career. She has a 6-5 record. She's 0-4 in the UFC. Surprised she even still has a contract, probably because of that injury, to be honest. But I think she loses here. I think she loses on the feet. And I think Lookboonmee, somebody that has been semi-aggressive with those trip-style takedowns in the clinch, I think she has takedown and top time upside against Estela Nunes that really has shown no semblance of a ground game either. So give me Lookboonmee. Lookboonmee by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our next matchup. This one's in the women's flyweight division as Dione Barbosa is a minus 600 favorite. The comeback on Diana Belbita is plus 450. And this is another one, a heavy favorite in WMMA, which never makes you feel great, but I feel like it's warranted because Dione Barbosa, she's a very well-rounded fighter. She's solid kicks on the feet, very strong ground game as well, good judo takedowns, and she holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And she's kind of like an armbar specialist. and she's facing someone in Belbita that not only struggles to defend takedowns, but she's been submitted multiple times in her career, most recently against Molly McCann, who submitted her with an armbar. So this is one where I don't think it's going to be long before Barbosa gets the fight where she feels the most comfortable and overwhelms Belbita on the mat and finds that submission. We'll say it's Barbosa by submission. That's the official pick. The next fight up, we have Daniel Frunza, a minus 166 favorite. The comeback on Rhys McKee is plus 140. And I was not a big fan of Daniel Frunza. He fought on the Contender Series week 7 last season. And to be honest, I just kind of think he's a jobber. A lot of his wins came on the Romanian regional scene. He is primarily a striker, needs to keep the fight on the feet. Now, he does have power, and he does have a little bit of pace. His cardio seems pretty solid, too. But he's very reckless on the feet. We even saw him dropped in his fight before Contender Series. He came back and won that. But I don't fully trust the durability, and I don't trust the grappling either. This guy's super reckless and hasn't really shown much of a ground game whatsoever. He's been submitted in both of his professional losses. Now, I don't think Rhys McKee is going to look to grapple here. He's never done that in UFC, really. But I do think Rhys McKee has at least got more experience here. He's fought the much better level of competition. He's also very long on the feet, and he's a good striker as well. He's going to be working with a 5-inch reach advantage. I don't fully trust the durability of McKee either, so it's possible Frunza just comes in here and touches the chin, but I think that's just as likely for McKee. And because he has some of the other intangibles going in his favor, that is going to slightly have me favor the underdog here in Rhys McKee. We'll say it's McKee by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Daniel Willie Cat Santos, a minus 162 favorite. The comeback on Davy Grant is plus 136. And I talked about the age being a factor in that Victor Henry fight. Once you start to get older, pushing 40 in the bantamweight division, generally not a good look. And that's usually where you start to see some pretty massive decline in some of these fighters. Now, Davy Grant, I had a big bet against him against Ramon Tavares, which obviously did not work out, but it's never Davy Grant for me. Credit to him for, his chin holding up in that fight. He looked good, just kind of gave Tavares the vet lesson here. I don't see that happening against Willie Cat Santos. Davy Grant now pushing 40 years old. He turns 40 later this year, so the age and that potential drop-off, even more of a factor for me, and I've just never been a Davy Grant guy. He's sloppy on the feet, basically just wings those heavy hook shots that you can see from a mile away. I think Santos just paces him on the feet, maybe even hurts him, but regardless, I think he beats him here. We'll say it's Santos by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Louis Gurule, a minus 218 favorite. The comeback on Buday Osborne is plus 180. And yet again, I feel like the theme of this card is fighters that are on, a 3 or 4 fight losing streak that need to win or are potentially looking at getting cut here. And we see that again with Buday Osborne. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He is a sizable underdog in this spot against Louis Gurule, who's coming off that Contender Series performance against Nick Piccinini, who comes from a super high-level wrestling background. He was taken down 10 times in that fight, but Piccinini just could not hold this guy down, did nothing but the takedowns, and Gurule was constantly outworking him. This guy actually has a pretty impressive background over in LFA. He's 10-0, undefeated, very well-rounded skill set. He is a little bit small for the division, but he does carry power. He does have decent grappling as well. And this is a spot where I just can't trust Buday Osborne because part of me sees plus 180 here, and you're like, Buday could probably compete early. He's got some knees, some power on the feet early. He can kind of surprise you early in these fights. But the fact of the matter is he's not a good, consistent round winner, and he doesn't have a consistent gas tank either. And when you're facing someone in Gurule that is so well-rounded, that does have better experience than you're used to seeing in fighters making their UFC debut off the Contender Series, I got to side with the newcomer here. We'll say it's Gurule by TKO, and I feel like instead of investing in a side here, I think the under, depending at what price we can get, I think early prices are around, a pick 'em in the 2.5 market. So we'll see what that looks like, but I feel like leaning into an under might be the play here. But either way, I'm going to say it's Gurule by TKO. That's the official pick. And up next, we have the debut of my guy, Torres Finney, a minus 238 favorite. The comeback on Robert Valentin is plus 195. And Valentin is coming off the Ultimate Fighter finale against Ryan Loder, where he got mauled in the grappling and really just exposed on the mat. And that's a problem for him here against Torres Finney, who you guys know fought on the Contender Series multiple times. I talked about the high-level wrestling background, the athletic specimen that this dude is, former football player as well, Division I football player and wrestler. He's going to land takedowns here. There's no doubt about it. He's going to be throwing Valentin around like a sack of potatoes. However, the issue with Finney is that he's very low activity. Yes, he's going to take you down, but he doesn't really know what to do after that. Like, he tries to land big shots, but sometimes it doesn't materialize, and he's very low activity in general. He's also very sloppy on the feet. He can be hit, he can be clipped, and we know Valentin has power. So I feel like this is another one where rather than investing in the favorite and Finney, who we think is going to be able to land takedowns and probably get him out of there, I think maybe just leaning into the under here, depending on the price, is probably the move. But I am going to side with my guy Finney. I think the takedowns will be there, and he probably finds a finish on the mat. We'll say it's Finney by TKO. That's the official pick. Next up, we have Brad Tavares, a -258 favorite. The comeback on Gerald Meerschaert is +210. And to be honest, this is a fight that I really don't want any part of. On one hand, you have Brad Tavares, who is primarily a striker, does have solid takedown defense, has been taken down multiple times his last couple fights, but I still think his takedown defense is pretty solid. Should be able to keep the fight on the feet, where he likely has a pretty good striking advantage. But Brad Tavares has never been someone that you want to lay a chalk price tag on, because he fights on thin margins, doesn't have a ton of finishing upside either. And then you have the added risk of, if he is taken down, now he's going to the mat with Gerald Meerschaert, who's a very high-level submission grappler. But that's obviously the only way that Meerschaert can win here. So this is one where I don't like the price, but I do think he wins. There's just a lot of red flags on both sides. Both guys are getting closer to that 40-year mark as well. So aging fighters, red flags on both sides. It's going to be a pass for me, but in terms of the official pick, it's going to be Brad Tavares by decision. Next fight up, we have Kennedy Nzechukwu, a -325 favorite. The comeback on Martin Buday is +260. And I do favor the Kennedy side here. This is somebody that's very long for the division, good striker, usually needs to keep the fight on the feet. He has been improving his takedown defense, his get-up game, all of that stuff, which is great, but you definitely want him to keep the fight on the feet, where he will have a striking advantage over Martin Buday, and Buday is somebody that really just wants to lean on you, wants to make it dirty, hold you up against the fence. You know, the heavyweight Holly Holm, some people are saying, is Martin Buday. And I just don't trust the cardio, don't trust the work rate, or really the ability to get the fight to the mat. I like Nzechukwu here to dominate him on the feet. Nzechukwu also in the clinch has shown some nasty knees and elbows, and I think that could play a factor here against Buday, who I don't fully trust the cardio either. So it's going to be Nzechukwu for me. We'll say it's by TKO, and that's going to be the official pick. Next up, we have Chang Ho Lee, a -166 favorite. The comeback on Cortavius Romious is +140. And I like the underdog here for a couple reasons. For starters, I like to identify the fighters that sort of had that athletic cheat code. We saw that with Ateba Gautier, who made his UFC debut last week, knocked out Jose Medina inside the first round. A free square, some people would say, if they watched my video last week. But I think Romious is similar in the sense that he does have that kind of athletic cheat code. And Dana White talked about that when he signed him off the Contender Series. He was like, very impressed with him. He's like, hey, think about what this kid can do if he starts training with the right people. Give him a few years. His development could really elevate his overall skill set. And I tend to agree, because on the feet, he's got powerful striking. And on the mat, he's actually got some pretty tricky submission grappling as well. And against Chang Ho Lee, I never thought this guy was very good. Road to UFC fighter, which we've seen, they've been overestimated in terms of where they've been priced in the market. And we've seen that time and time again with these fighters. I also don't think he has a ton of power. He's coming off a fight against Zhao Long last year that I thought he lost. So there's multiple reasons here why I feel like there's got to be value on the underdog. I think he has more finishing upside, more big moment upside. And at +140, I feel like the price is probably too good to pass. So I'm going to say it's Cortavius Romious, and he gets it done by TKO. Next up, we have Joe Anderson Brito, a -205 favorite. The comeback on Pat Sabatini is +170. And I like the Brito side. I know he's coming off a loss against William Gomis in a close competitive fight. He actually busted a parlay of mine on that card, so that definitely stung a bit. But I think this is a good bounce back opportunity for Brito, who's another one of those fighters that's just very explosive, has clear power on the feet, and is going to have a massive power advantage against Pat Sabatini, somebody that we know struggles a little bit in terms of the durability. I think on the feet, he's kind of a sitting duck here against Joanderson Brito. On the mat is obviously where Sabatini might be able to high roll a finish, but I think Brito's well-versed enough on the mat to avoid the submission attempts of Sabatini and potentially just hurt him and get him out of there. We'll say it's Joanderson Brito by TKO. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event, as Lerone Murphy is a minus 325 favorite. The comeback on Josh Emmett is plus 260. And I just feel like this is a big price tag for Lerone Murphy to cover in potentially a 5-round fight against Josh Emmett, somebody that has 5-round experience, somebody that is known for being one of the heaviest hitters in this division. And let's not forget, Lerone Murphy's been dropped multiple times. He was dropped in his UFC debut against Tukigov, and he was dropped in his last fight against Dan Ige. So facing now someone with Josh Emmett, who's coming off that vicious knockout victory over Bryce Mitchell, I would not be surprised if Emmett can touch the chin of Lerone Murphy here. I expect the striking to be very competitive, and where I still would make Murphy the favorite because he does have the wrestling upside. We've seen him go and mix in the takedowns over his last couple fights. Josh Emmett never really been a guy that's able to defend takedowns well. So I get that type of angle for Lerone Murphy here, but I do think, again, just going back to the price, plus 260 for Josh Emmett, who should be able to make it competitive and probably has more finishing upside as well. I think the value's on the dog here. We'll say it's Josh Emmett by TKO. That's the official pick. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.